Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 157th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. So thank you, everybody, for listening twice a week to us talk about Bruins hockey and all kinds of other stuff. With me today, I have Boston.com's Conor Ryan. Conor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We'll get some good stuff in. We're definitely going to talk about the Bruins' overtime win on Saturday over the Florida Panthers. That was an excellent win. Some people want to call it lucky, kind of dismiss it a little bit, but I think it was significant on a lot of different levels, and we can talk about that. But we're also going to get into, most definitely, the Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, Rich Keefe, all the stuff that's been going on over the weekend. We're going to talk about it and cover the whole thing this morning. But before we get into all that, let's just thank our sponsors real quick. First, we've got Prize Picks. As always, download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. We also have the great folks at Game Time. If you need any kind of tickets, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, of course. But download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Connor?
Game time.
Game time. It's always game time at the Pucks with Haggs podcast, and it's always game time on the CLNS network. Okay, let's get into it. First, let's just talk about the win really quick before we get into the nitty-gritty, Connor. People want to talk about, luck being involved. And look, a game-winning goal, sure. There was definitely a puck luck bounce there. A Pastrnak pass bounces off a stick, goes into the net. But, frankly, the last two goals that were scored were lucky bounces. The other one was a chip shot that bounced up in the air, and somehow Osterley missed at it with his glove, and Swayman did too, and it kind of just floated into the net. So, the goal with 2 seconds left in the game to tie it was luck. The overtime winner was luck. That's sort of like what a playoff game is. A lot of times it comes down to a bounce of the puck or some luck that decides the difference in a game like that. But what's not luck is 29 blocked shots. What's not luck is Jeremy Swayman standing on his head and playing great, which he's done the last few games. What's not luck is them picking themselves off the mat when they gave up that goal in the closing seconds of regulation to tie it. And they could have been an absolute friggin' dumpster fire disaster in overtime where, they could have said, here we go again, and just folded like a tent and lost that game, and they didn't. I liked the fight back they had several times. I liked, Oliver Wahlstrom finally breaking through and getting his first goal. And credit to the Bruins for sticking with him, right? When he didn't have a goal in his first 9 games. And you definitely could have pulled him from the lineup. We had talked about it on the podcast last week. Bring up Patra, bring up Merkulov. Let's start seeing some other people because these other guys aren't putting the puck in the net. And it's a results-oriented business at the NHL level. So, Pastrnak had 2 goals. He's now got 6 goals in his last 4 games and has really sort of answered, I think, a lot of the people on podcasts and columns sort of calling him out and saying what's going on here when he was on a pace for, his lowest goal output in a decade. And he answered the call. He responded in a big way. So I think there was a lot of good things to like about that win on Saturday, in addition to, Connor, them getting over the mental block of the Florida Panthers. I think just getting the results against them and getting a win against that team finally helps them psychologically. As damaging as I think that loss was at the beginning of the year, because you could see that really set them back confidence-wise quite a bit. I think getting that result now, snapping that 6-game streak, the way that they won it, a lot of things that are going on here, I saw some encouraging signs and some things that I liked and really a response that I thought was good from the Bruins.
Yeah, I think when you look at who the Bruins are playing against, the situation going into the game with the losing streak, a win's a win, right? And it doesn't matter even how lopsided the shot totals were. I mean, people talk about the 2023 playoffs, that first time the Bruins played the Panthers, and what was it, Game 5, the Bruins outshot Florida 44-21. Yep. And then there's a gaff in overtime. Tkachuk buries it, and you survive another day if you're the Panthers. And what happens there? And again, it's not the stakes aren't the same with this team, but in terms of just the microcosm of where the Bruins are right now, how much, tough sledding they've been going through. I mean, even look at right before the game tying goal by Florida, where the Bruins have a chance to get the empty net goal. Puck goes off the post, and you're like, all right, here we go again, and they tie it. It feels like the way this year's been going, what's going to happen over time? They lose a faceoff, don't hold the puck the entire time, and Reinhardt scores again or something like that. And you'd be like, all right, yeah, rinse, repeat. That's kind of how things are going right now. And yeah, like even if it wasn't the best game in terms of shot totals, what have you, you survived. And I think it's encouraging to see them just get the result, have guys that continue to play well, whether it's, guys like Geeky, who I think have been really good since the coaching change. But I think especially like this is a team that, I don't think this one win's changing the entire complexion of the season by any means, but it's surviving and advancing. And if you're the Bruins and you're trying to find some sort of positives or map out how you're going to be a competitive team down the stretch here, two big things are Jeremy Swayman playing at a very high level and David Pastrnak being your kind of cheat code offensively, that even when a lot's not going right, you can trust him to manufacture some offense for you. And I think you look at the response they had, the fact that Swayman continues to play at a pretty high level over the last couple of weeks now, even if the record doesn't reflect it. And Pastrnak, as you said, 6 goals in his last 4 games. If Swayman's going and Pasternak's going and you get contributions here and there, this team isn't riding the ship, or they're not all of a sudden going to be a wagon by any means, but they can be competitive. And I think that's encouraging to see, especially just how tough the sledding has been the last couple of weeks here.
Yeah, they can be a playoff team. I mean, in essence, that's what we're saying with this, what we see now. And this is what I took from that game is like, they earned that win. They were determined to win that game, and they won that game. Like, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't dominant by any fashion. And I think there's clearly a talent gap between the two teams. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But they were able to say, we're stopping the losing streak here. We're determined to win this game. And they were able to see it through and make it happen. And, they've done this a few times this year where, going in, they've determined like this is when it's going to stop, or they're going to get a win tonight, or they're going to play the right way. And when they do that, they win. Like, they've been able to do that and summon that when they need to. And that's a good sign for a team. That tells me that it's a playoff team. Like, are they consistently beating playoff competition? No. Do they definitely have flaws to their game? Yes. Are they going to be overly reliant on their like best players to bring their A+ game for them to win? Yes. Like, most nights, Charlie McAvoy has to play like a number 1 all-star level defenseman for them to win. When he has a bad game, they get smoked. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is definitely one of the bellwether players on this team by the way that he plays and how focused he is on being a two-way defenseman and not like shading too much to the offense and sort of making mistakes defensively. When he does all that, they're good. Jeremy Swayman, when he plays like that, like that's why he got the contract, and that's why they're dangerous in the playoffs, because he's going to give them a chance to win just about every game in the playoffs if he plays that way, and is going to keep them in games and is going to steal games for them. Like, in a lot of ways, he stole that game against Florida. Between him and the defense being willing to block a ton of shots and sacrifice to win, those were really the two things that won them that game. And you're right, the Pastrnak providing the offense at the level he did last year where he kind of carried things, that helps them quite a bit. And it allows other people to maybe not feel as much pressure offensively. And I continue to think this team, even though, other teams have a lot of games in hand and they've been up and down and they're flawed and there's a lot of things going on here, I still think they're a wild card playoff team. And I still think they, have the potential to maybe even win around in the playoffs, especially if they can pick up somebody at the deadline that can be viable offensively for them, a winger that can help put the puck in the net. But, I think people just wanted to write this game off as a lucky win. And I didn't see it as lucky. I saw it as a team that rolled up their sleeves and said, we're winning this friggin' game and we're determined to do it. And like, they did it. And that is good. Nothing but positives there. As far as I'm concerned, like, I mean, there's also like the clear fact that like, they got stuck on the ice, some players at the end of that game when they were icing the puck over and over again. You saw Pavel Zacha lose like 4 or 5 D-zone faceoffs. Osterley should not have been out there in that situation. They couldn't get him off because they were icing the puck and they were stuck. That's not the guy you want out there in the last seconds of the game as far as defensemen go. So situationally, there was some stuff you can look at, and certainly you continue to look at them as, for a while now, for a couple of years now, they've been a team that like can't get stops at the end defensively when they need them, especially at the end of a game when a good team really pushes them. And that didn't change in that game as well. But I just liked a lot of what I saw in that game, and I'm not going to discount it based on what I've seen in other games. And really, what I don't know what your take is on the losing streak, but from what I saw, it was, and basically they hadn't played well since coming out of the holiday break at all, really. Yeah. What I saw, though, was after the home and home against Columbus, I saw a team that struggled to score goals in the first couple of games, Washington and New York, big time, struggled to generate offense, tried to overcorrect by loosening up defensively to get more offense, scored a little bit more and had close losses and sort of like didn't get really wrapped on the wrist too bad for like doing what they were doing defensively. And then finally the Chickens came home to roost against Edmonton. And I think they sort of started to self-correct after that and basically led to what we saw on Saturday. But I just think, there's a long learning curve, I feel like, with this Bruins team where they're kind of stubborn and they want to continue to believe that they can get into shootouts with other teams, or they can get into a fast-paced chance for chance kind of like style with these other teams that want to score. And they just don't have the personnel for it. Like, this is going to be a boring team when they win. They're going to win 3-2, 2-1. It's going to be low scoring, low event, defensive hockey, relying on their goaltending, relying on some opportunistic offense. It's not going to be a special teams fiesta. It's not going to be run and gun hockey. And that's just like, they have to make peace, but that's how they're going to win games if they want to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I feel like this team's kind of been going through an identity crisis for most of the year, whether it's that first game where I feel like they came into that game against Florida like, all right, we beefed up the roster. We're more equipped to handle Florida, and then they get punched in the mouth. And I feel like they just didn't. I feel like they did not expect at all like what was going to play out with how that game went. And they've been kind of going back and forth of what their identity is throughout the year. And like you could look at, when Jim Montgomery was here and the way he wants to play and the way, especially offensively, he wants the team to be built, and they just don't have the horses for the way he wants to be a quality over quantity, shot volume, stuff like that.
Yep.
And I think, like as you said, when this team is playing well, they have to kind of be what they were when things were going well with Sacco, where it's like winning games 2-1, 3-1, not really the most riveting games. But if that's the roster that you have and you have clear limitations, like, prioritizing defending the net front, making the smart, simple plays with the puck, learning to fight another day instead of, pushing up in the offensive zone and creating odd man rushes down the other end of the ice. Like, maybe it's not the most riveting product, but like, this isn't the 2022-23 Bruins either. You don't have like Taylor Hall in your third line. You don't have depth all across your lineup. And even if like that's maybe not what players, are looking for, it's like, well, what's going to get you in the position to win most nights? Or, that's the whole thing. It's like, you look at those losses to teams like the Islanders and Toronto. It's like, if they just tightened up defensively, probably win some of those games. Like if David Pastrnak's still giving you 2 goals a night, and can kind of, again, as we've seen throughout his career, kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat in terms of just generating offense for you. If you stick to your principles of what this team needs to do, you probably come out with at least, maybe a point out of that Toronto game, or if not an outright win, the way that they were playing and how loose they were defensively. So I've said it a couple of times, but this team, if they play to their capabilities, like what they should look at is like the 21 Islanders. Like that's a team that respectfully was really boring. That team was not a fun watch, but and it's not to say the Bruins are going to end the season the same way, but that team was boring as hell, and they came within a game of beating a wagon of a Tampa Bay team. Like just playing smart, principled hockey, contributions at 5-on-5. Some guys get hot at the right times. You got a good goalie, and you see what happens there. So that's not, you pitch that compared to where the Bruins were a few years ago. Yeah, maybe not the most riveting thing, but I don't know. Ask like the 90s Devils. Ask fans during that time if they cared about how riveting their product is when they've got a couple of cups. Like whatever wins with the personnel you have is what you have to do.
Yeah. No, I think the NHL probably had some complaints about the trap happy era in the league, but and they changed things around because of that. But you're right. You have to play to what's effective and what your personnel is. And Jim Montgomery, like, he wanted playmakers. He wanted guys
Yeah.
that could hold on to the puck and make plays. And like, if you're on a team full of skill and talent and playmakers, great. But like, that was not working with this year's team because they were not playmakers, not enough of them. And it was just a bad fit, I think, style-wise with the roster that they had. And it was pretty apparent when you were watching what he was trying to preach and how they were trying to play and just the personnel that they had. It was a total bad fit. And maybe it'll be better a little bit in St. Louis for him. That's a little more skill down there. And I think for right now, Joe Sacco, I think, is the perfect fit to keep them on track for what they need to do defensively and how they need to play. And he's very, I think, comfortable kind of trying to snap them back into place and keep them on focus as to what exactly they need to do to have success this year. And he's done it in a very calm, sort of straightforward, like, guys, this is what we need to do. And you got to, do your job, and you need to, roll up your sleeves and play this way in order to get success and for the team to have success. And not doing it in a really demonstrative way, but just doing it in a way that I think has allowed them to sort of like calm out a little bit and not ride the roller coaster so much. The one frustrating thing I would say about that losing streak, from any perspective, was just that they couldn't, they frittered away 3 or 4 points easily. Yeah. During that stretch where some of those games they should have pushed to overtime at the very least and gotten points out of it. And you wonder if that 2, 3, 4 points that they wasted not getting games into overtime and losing in regulation is going to hurt them at the end of the year as Tampa Bay and Ottawa invariably, or now some other teams, right? Ottawa's fallen back a little bit, but certainly Tampa
Detroit. Detroit's
this,
won 7 in a row, right?
Yes. So those teams are making some noise and coming back, and pretty much all of them have games in hand on the Bruins. So that's really something to watch, and you wonder if wasted points is going to come back to bite them. Before we get into the Marchand, Pastrnak, Rich Keefe circus, we are going to take a break and talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and super simple. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money during the NHL regular season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. That's right, I said it, Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Here's my picks for this week. Garnett Hathaway with more than 3 hits. Alexander Barkov with more than 20 minutes on ice. And my favorite, Sam Bennett with less than 0.5 points. That's right. Sam Bennett is going to be kept off the board. And kudos to the refs for finally calling a penalty on Sam Bennett in overtime.
Shocking, yes.
For some of the shenanigans. An obvious high sticking call that he somehow had a big problem with when he was going to the box. And it's like, dude, you just whacked him in the face with your stick. Like, that's a penalty. And that kind of led to what we saw at the end. But anyway, Sam Bennett, I'm predicting you to get shut out. So that's part of the Prize Picks picking. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks, and they also offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's get back into the show. Rich Keefe, right in the middle of the 6-game losing streak before the Florida win, went on the air and provided one of his Keefe bombs, apparently, about the Bruins. And this is what he said. The locker room is a disaster, and David Pastrnak is at the center of that. David Pastrnak has told the team he doesn't want to be on a line with Brad Marchand, and it may stem from Brad Marchand calling out Pastrnak for some of his play. So he's trying to tell us that Pastrnak has told the team he doesn't want to play with Marchand, and he doesn't know why. And he says, and maybe it's this. I don't know. Like, it doesn't sound like his information is all that sound when he's like floating around trying to figure out why this is. It also doesn't compute that, like, he's going to say, I don't want him on my line, but I'll play with him on the power play, and they always play on the power play together. And logically speaking, they don't usually play on a line now anyway, and haven't really since the perfection line broke up, because they have to split those two up and have them playing on different lines. Like, so much of this felt like just crap being thrown against the wall and sort of Buzzard circling because the Bruins are in a losing streak, and like, you know, people have been sort of salivating and waiting to drop bombs on the Bruins room for when they hit a hard time like this. There was a great response from Brad Marchand pretty quickly afterwards. He went to social media, posted a bunch of like best friends pictures, stepbrother style best friends pictures of Pastrnak and Marchand together over the years, saying basically he's one of my best friends. This is what he said to reporters after when he was asked about it. I've heard what was said in the media this morning. It's unfortunate. I know reporters have a job to do, and that job is to report on the team. Usually you try to be fact-based. But when there's just blatant lies told in the media, that's where there's a problem. The fact this guy has a platform and is just making this up is embarrassing. There's zero truth to anything he said. This is how you lose a job very quickly. The fact that he's going to have a job after this is insane. There's zero truth to him being a problem in the room, talking about Pastrnak. He's one of the most loved guys in the room. There are zero issues in the room at all. And to say he's at the center of anything is a completely fabricated lie. The guy has zero merit to anything he's saying. The guy can go pound sand and go back to the closet where nobody knew who he was before. And look, I get it. Adam Jones and Rich Keefe are trying to get ratings. They're trying to take away ratings from 98.5 and trying to get like on the board and, you know, pull their show up as far as the notability and the notoriety that they're getting. And like, they have to say and do some outlandish things to get attention and to draw attention away from 98.5 and try to be a competitor. Like, I understand all of that, but, and he's trying to parlay that he broke some very obvious Bruins stories, like Montgomery getting fired. Like, who knew that was going to happen in the middle of all that? Like Swayman's contract, which he actually got wrong the first time and then like somehow got it right the second time.
Yeah.
You know, and a few other things that are like things that were about to happen, and he just kind of like said it. And like, there's going to be no accountability if he like it didn't happen when he said it was going to happen. So like, I give him very limited credit for like being tapped in. He's never in the locker room. You know that. I know that. He's not talking to a lot of these people. He has no real understanding of what's going on. He may hear it from like one person, and he's getting their sense of everything that's going on. But I just think this was one that did not ring true with me, somebody that's known these players for a long time, somebody that's been in the room all the time and every day. I think the stuff about Marchand and Pastrnak not getting along, Pastrnak saying he doesn't want to play with Marchand, like any of that stuff, I see zero truth to that. I've not heard a whisper of that, and I think it's completely wrong and made up. And it was right of Marchand to respond the way that he did. And, you know, it was weird that Keefe, like, when Marchand went out and put a social media post basically saying it was full of crap, and like how he came out and said this, Keefe tried to take a victory lap and say, oh, there's confirmation that it's true. Nobody would ever react this way. That's bullcrap. Like, I think anybody with pride would react that way if somebody was lying about them. I would react that way. If someone was, talking complete smack about me that was 100% not true, I would be out there like defending myself, and I would be out there angry, like doing exactly what Marchand is doing. So like, I just think it was the exact reaction you'd get from somebody that was put in a position where they had to defend themselves from completely false accusations and stuff that's not true. So it was interesting to see it all go down, but it's disappointing that in our business that like people have to like make stuff up to draw attention to themselves and sort of drag other people through the mud, especially, in situations like this, it's going to happen where the Buzzard starts circling and a team is in a losing streak.
Yeah, it is funny how, taking a victory lap after Marchand calls you out. Noted a person who will not like call someone out or find a way to draw a dig at you, Brad Marchand. Like, where have you been the last
shocking.
decade plus? Yeah, exactly. For him to roast someone when he clearly does not agree with what you're saying. No, I agree, Joe. Like, I think you look at it and like the initial report, as you said, it's when you like first hear it, like, oh, that's kind of sounds off. But then it feels like it's almost like written by like an AI where the uncanny valley, like something slightly off where like, you're like, he doesn't want to be on his line. Where as you said, you're like, oh yeah, he hasn't been on his line regularly in years now.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about? Also, it's like, even if he was on the same line, which like they won't do because of the, you're spreading the wealth there. Like, I don't think David Pastrnak, if he wanted to, would be like, yeah, I don't want to be with the other like skilled top 6 guy we have in our lineup too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
And again, I don't know if it's the fact that you got all this drama now. It's convenient this drama spikes up like a few days after all the drama in Vancouver, which is drawing all the headlines out there.
Yes,
but
well, it almost, Connor, it almost looks like somebody read the Vancouver story about
like,
JT
ooh,
Miller and Elias
yeah.
Pettersson and just decided to transpose it to the Boston Bruins. Are like, ooh, this is juicy. Let's just say that this is going on with the Bruins and it'll cause turmoil and chaos here. Let's do that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I agree with everything you said, Joe, in terms of I don't see that at all being the case in terms of that. And it's like, also, whoever is sending that info, whether it's that of, as you said, the Buzzard circling, or like, hell, maybe there's like one time where like these guys disagreed over something. That's every person at work. It's not even like the pro athlete of which you can be like, listen, these guys are wired differently. That's anyone at work. Yeah, you work with someone and they piss you off one day. Like, that does not mean these guys are also not friends, or there's something deep rooted in the culture in the room, stuff like that. It's, again, you're trying to get a storyline that, you know, you look at where Brad Marchand and Pastrnak, all those guys got in front of it too. Like, it was like the storyline for the day, I guess, on Friday, but they pretty much snuffed it out in terms of, you know, where this was and where it's going. And I think when you apply where these guys have been together, the relationship they have, and also just the report itself, as you said, of like breaking down the logic behind it. Yeah, it's something where once you apply that critical lens to it, you're like, I don't really know where exactly this is coming from, or how merited this is, when, again, it's convenient this comes out right when the team is pretty much taking on water. And it's, I guess those are the storylines that come out when you're in a bad rut or what have you, but I can't see it, you know, being based in fact or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in some ways it's almost casually related to what's going on with the Patriots. With the Gerard Mayo firing, I felt like that happened a few days before we heard like fire Sweeney in chant in the balcony during that Oilers game. And it almost feels like there's a little blood in the water, like Boston sports fans are all of a sudden like hungry to see like turmoil.
It's the French Revolution. Everyone wants to just take everyone's head off. Seriously.
I feel like there's a little bit of that going on right now. And the Bruins are getting swept up in that and caught up in that, unfortunately. And like you said, like I as soon as I saw it and I looked at what was actually said, it felt like a casual person that doesn't even have an understanding of like what goes on in hockey and what's going on with the Bruins, you know, was trying to stir something up. It just felt like, you know, there wasn't enough detail and there certainly wasn't enough logic behind it to make it seem like it was true or there was credence to it in any way, shape, or form. Like, what is Pastrnak like Denny Lemieux style, picking up the phone from Slapshot and saying like, I don't want to play with this effing guy anymore, and hanging up the phone and calling a meeting with the coach to say like, I don't play with Brad Marchand? Like, no, what you're saying is absolutely correct. A best offensive player wants to play with another one of the best offensive players. I think they would want to be on the same line, and they you know, selfishly, they absolutely would if they could, because I think it would be better for them offensively and it would make things easier for them offensively. But I think they both understand that they have to play on different lines, and you still see them come together sometimes. There are times when Sacco mixes up the lines and has put those guys together. So it's, you know, especially if they need a goal and it's a third period, sometimes you'll see them move things around and those two will be on the ice together with somebody else. And like I said, at the end of the day, they're always going to be on the power play together. So if there's like hate going on between these two, like they would demand to be on other power play units, and they would want to, you know, one would be on one and one would be on the other, and all this other stuff would be happening, and it's not. So like when you put the smell test up to this whole thing with like Keefe, it just doesn't stand up to it. But I did like the response from Marchand. I did like the response from Pastrnak. And like in some ways, it's interesting, Connor. Something like this could be something that bands them together even tighter and helps push them to a different level and helps them sort of come together as a group. You know, I think circling the wagons and really like outside things forcing you to become a tighter unit and to become a better team, like that can just maybe one of those instances where like this unwittingly turns them into a better unit, that even more. And in a lot of ways, like the adversity that they've had this year, if they do get to the playoffs, they're going to be a tough-minded unit and they're going to be able to bounce back from punches because they've taken a bunch of punches this year and they just keep going.
Yeah, if you look at where this team is compared to previous years in terms of adversity, as you said, this has been a up and down year. The silver linings have been hard to kind of come by at times for this team, and they've been pretty battle tested in that regard if they do get into the playoffs. But yeah, who knew, Joe, that the biggest key to turn this ship around this year was just the power of friendship, apparently. Maybe that's what this team needs to get going. Listen, there have been more bizarre ways for teams to go on a little bit of a run here. Remember last year when like the Nashville Predators wanted to go to like the Sphere in Las Vegas for a concert and they were like denied, like the team wouldn't let them go out late, and they won like 16 in a row. It was like they went 14-0-2 or something like that. So more bizarre things have happened in terms of what has galvanized a team than the players, pushing back against a sports radio report. So yeah, I think you look at where this team is at and the adversity, like look at where they were 2 years ago, where they really didn't have any hurdles at all, and kind of went to the playoffs being like, yeah, I feel like we got the horses, we're ready to roll, and then they get punched in the mouth and don't really know what to do. This team, if they get into the playoffs and they lose the first game against whoever it is, if you're a wildcard team, Capitals or Florida, Toronto, lose 4-1, they're probably like, all right, we'll shake that one off. We've had a lot of worse games than 4-1 that we've lost earlier this year. So again, it remains to be seen just how far this team can go. But if they get into the playoffs, they are a team that has gone through a lot of adversity, has taken their lumps, and kind of knows how to bounce back from things. Because even look at this Florida game, that's kind of a microcosm of that. As you said, it wasn't ugly. You get a bounce here and there, but that's a team that if they were really reeling, as soon as they tie that game late, Florida, that feels like when we're all of a sudden that game is over in 50 seconds into overtime, right? Like you're just completely deflated. You want to get the hell out of Florida, get back home. And they fought and got 2 points out of it. And that's a sign of a team that, listen, are they perfect? No, they're a pretty flawed roster, but they show that they can push back and fight back. And I think it's good to see the response off the ice on Friday and then the results on the ice on Saturday.
Yeah, flat out, a locker room that's a disaster doesn't win that game on Saturday.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. A locker room that's a disaster, they start sniping at each other on the bench and it's over. Like Toronto Maple Leaf style, they start yelling at each other on the bench and then it's over in overtime pretty quickly. So like the proof is in the pudding. When a team responds the way that they do, that tells you right there that it's not a disaster and that they respond and come together and find a way to win in those situations. And they've done that pretty consistently. Like this year, I would say it's taken them a little too long at times to respond when things aren't going great, but they do respond eventually. Like they don't have, I think, the talent to pull themselves out of it after a game like they did in years past or two. Like when they see things start to go sideways, they correct almost immediately. This looks like it takes them a little bit longer to get there, but they do. And those are all signs of a unit that's together and a room that's together and not a disaster and not sort of like going at each other or pointing the fingers at each other as some people would like to say or think. All right, let's take another break real quick in the podcast to talk about our friends at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for obviously your Bruins tickets, but also if you're looking for tickets to the Celtics or even comedy or concert tickets as well. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The game of the week for this week that would make an outstanding post-holiday buy is the Tuesday, January 14th showdown between the Bruins and the Lightning at the Garden. This is going to be an excellent playoff-style game, big game for both teams. The super deal is $148 for Loge corner seats, section 20, row 10, which is pretty great value for Bruins tickets in this new year. Priority gives you Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy theater, etc. The all-in pricing, you toggle this feature and it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. We hate the surprise fees, so good on Game Time for getting rid of those. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Can't do much better than that. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Connor?
Game time.
It's game time. That's right. All right. Really quickly before we go, Connor, I did want to switch it up a little bit. Just get any thoughts you might have. I know you like to carve up Boston College players, being a proud BU grad. Dean Latorno, 2 assists in 15 games. I think he was a healthy scratch over the last week at BC. There was even rumors that he might be leaving BC and going to, I don't know if it was Quebec Major Junior, but somewhere. I kind of saw this one coming. Saw him in development camp. Like, he was not one of the best players at development camp. Looked young, looked raw. Looked like his compete wasn't where it needed to be, too, which is one that was concerning to me. Like, there was talent, size, puck possession, like a good shot, definitely. But he looked like one of those guys that it was gonna be a learning curve his first year at BC, because he was going to be taking a major step up competition-wise, and it was going to be hard for him. And you're talking about a BC team that's loaded with Gabe Perreault, Ryan Leonard, Jelvik, who's had a really good development camp for the Bruins. There's a star-studded group that want to win a national championship this year. So any thoughts on what we've seen out of Dean Latorno, the first-round pick for the Bruins in these first few months at BC? And have you even gotten a chance to see him play?
Yeah, I haven't seen him play yet. I will be at the BU-BC game next weekend to see the Terriers vanquish the Eagles. But no, I mean, listen, it's tough, right? Because, listen, baseline, a guy's a first-round pick. You want to see a little bit more production. I know that he got kind of called out, I think, during the broadcast on ESPN. They mentioned that the Bruins had a first-round pick that had 2 points. So
yeah,
not ideal when you see that. I do think there's a little bit of context needs to be required there, because I think everyone went in going into it this season thinking that, one, he was going to be a project, but especially this year, it was going to be a lot of tough sledding. And that's not to say oh, don't worry, this guy's going to be Tage Thompson down the road, or, whatever the high projections of what he could be. Listen, you want to see a little bit more production, but this is a guy coming from St. Andrews College, pretty much playing prep, going right to the highest level of college hockey and Hockey East, when ideally he was supposed to go to the USHL and probably go through a lot of growing pains there. There already is a jump up from prep to USHL. The only reason why he got elevated is because pretty late in the game is when Will Smith left, and that's why he got in that spot. So, listen, you want to see a little bit more. I was going into the year expecting him to be 10 to 12 points on a bottom 6 role, and I'm sure people would even look at that and be like, whoa, he's a first-round pick. This guy is, what is he, 6'11"? No, it's no, listen, this is a guy that is going to be, I think, a project, even if he works out. He's tough to gauge what he is. Is he a legit NHLer? Is he Brian Boyle? Is he Tage Thompson? It remains to be seen what exactly he is. Listen, I don't think it's been the smoothest transition so far, but I'm also not entirely surprised, nor would I kind of paint him with a broad brush as to where exactly he's going to be in another year or two, when I think we all expected there was going to be quite a few growing pains with him going into the year. So listen, I think we've all been pretty candid about the Bruins and their struggles with developing prospects. And right now, at face value, when you look at guys like Teddy Stiga, who is taken after him, who has obviously had a great World Juniors, the optics right now are not great, but I'm also not ready to knock the guy when I think he was going to be a 3-4 year development project in and of himself. So not great, but I'm also not going DEFCON 1 just yet.
No, and I don't think you should. I too thought third, fourth line, maybe double digits in points, but certainly not going to be a huge factor offensively on that team. And it was going to be more of an adjustment year for him because, as you said, you're completely right. He the original projection for him was to go to junior hockey for a year and get sort of the growing pains out of the way before he got to Boston College, be a little bit bigger, stronger, more experienced at 19 years old. But when Will Smith leaves, that opens up a spot for him. And it was funny. I remember when he got drafted, I remember one of the things he said was Latorno was that I'll probably be at BC for a year or two and then go pro. And I was just dude, I don't think so, man. I just especially after I watched development camp, I was this kid thinks I think this kid is a little naive, or he has no idea what's waiting for him in Hockey East and at Boston College, making the jump that he made. because I took that as being like, okay, he's not really like fully aware of what's going on here, because like it was going to be a major step up for him, and I'm not sure he realized that how big a step Boston College was going to be. But on the other end of it, and what made me think of it was the broadcast and what the mention it got, and I kind of felt like that was a little over the top. I got to be honest with you. Like the reference was like, nobody's knocking on the door at Providence. There's no help down there. Matt Patra's slamming the door. Like, he's going to come up and help this team in the second half. And I think he's going to be a factor. I don't think there's any question about that. I wouldn't say so much. And Merkelov's having a pretty good season too. And I think we'll see him in the second half as well. So there's two players right there, I think, that are viable, NHL level players. Certainly, I think Matt Patra's an NHL player. I think we've already seen that. As long as he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a good, impactful NHL player. And like, to call out an 18-year-old kid like at Boston College, the first round pick, basically sort of already insinuating on some level that he might be a bust. Like that whole like soliloquy, like slamming the Bruins draft and development, I thought was a little over the top. Like, yeah, they deserve some criticism. Yeah, it was one scouting director talking about another scouting staff. Like, what are they going to say? Great things about them? Like, they can't wait to blow up another team and make them look bad. But like, I just think the players they've produced over the last couple of years and Patra, like, they're not the worst draft and development system in the NHL. They're not the best. They're probably in the bottom third for sure, probably in the bottom 10 teams. But I'm not sure that they're worse, especially based on last year and the players that they produced from the AHL to the NHL.
Yeah, no, that's probably the same scouting director who probably sent the DM to Keefe as well. Maybe that guy was just on a one-man warpath. It's just like, what am I going to do today just to drag the Boston Bruins every possible avenue I can? Yeah, no, I agree. Like, listen, I think we're all pretty realistic of the Bruins and their inability at times to, draft it and bring in another wave of young talent. Like, it hasn't been the easiest. So this isn't like a team like the Dallas Stars where it feels like every year or two they bring in a guy that's an impact player, or Carolina. Even look at like Toronto, the way they bring in guys you've never heard of, and all of a sudden they're 40-point players.
Yep.
But also, yeah, I agree. Like, as much as the Bruins do get dragged for like the last 5-6 years of like, their prospect pool is barren. I remember like 4 years ago, they were like the 30th ranked prospect pool, and they bring up Jeremy Swayman. It's like, that's a pretty good hit. We're not talking about him. Like, and so again, like, would you have liked to seen like, a guy like Lysell up right now or something being kind of what Wyatt Johnson is? I don't think anyone's like Wyatt Johnson, but an everyday NHL middle six winger, yes, that'd be great. But I also feel like the Bruins have hit at least on quite a few of these guys that have helped them for right now. Again, I agree. It's not like I'm saying they should be a 14th ranked prospect pool or anything like that. No, but I also think that, like dragging a guy like Letourneau, when I feel like, most people who saw where he was drafted, what his profile was, I think all of us went into this year knowing full well, like, listen, we don't really know what this guy is. Like, so if he does flame out, don't do the victory lap, because no one really knew what he was going to be, but it's going to take some time for him. If you went into this year expecting him to be a guy that's going to come out his freshman year at BC with 24 points in 30-something games, that was never going to be realistic. But to then pile on the guy when it's kind of the same thing with like the Keefe stuff of like, the Bruins are doing well right now. How else can we punch down when they're not doing well? Like, their prospect pool sucks too. It's like, all right, I'm not gonna drag 18-year-old Letourneau when it's, again, like, I'm not putting any sweeping. Let's see where he is at the end of his sophomore year before we start being like, ooh, I don't know if maybe he's got what it takes. I'm not taking anything out of this freshman year, really.
No. And I think Letourneau was a swing for the fences project.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is. Like, in the first round, you should do that. You should go for the player that you're really going for, a star player. And it could either like work out spectacularly, or it could be a guy that, never really makes it in the NHL, but you're trying, especially later in the first round. I think that's kind of what you have to do, is go for those kind of players and go high ceiling rather than making like safe conservative picks. And I think they also had another guy that they wanted that got taken from them. Like somebody traded up and took a player they were looking at right before them, right before he got picked. And that played into it as well, which happens in the draft. But yeah, I just thought, there was a couple instances this week where like I think people are sensing now that there might be a little weakness with the Bruins that there hasn't been in a long time, and they're starting to like carve it up and take their shots and see what happens because it's been a while since you've been able to do that with the team. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Connor, thank you very much for joining us. Let's also thank our sponsors real quick. Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Also, our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Connor?
Game time.
Game time. Connor, thank you very much for going through this drama-filled episode of Pucks with Haggs with me.
Happy to help, Joe.
Everybody else out there, stop taking shots at the Bruins, you buzzards. We'll see you soon. See you at the ring.